Christmas!
Oh my gosh.
Merry Christmas!
Yeah.
If you're listening to this the day it came out, it's the day after Christmas, and we hope you all had a wonderful one.
Hope nobody got coal in their stocking.
I hope you all were on the nice list and that your family acted normal and you got what you wanted and had a good meal.
I'm doing Operation Mongoose today.
Good. Really fast. Let's address why this episode is a week late.
Because your baby was sick. I've been sick.
Everybody's sick.
I think you said you got like a cold or whatever.
Yeah, my poor little baby was so sick, but praise the Lord, she is doing much, much, much better now. But we did have to postpone a week because she was in rough shape.
Yeah.
But she's thriving and she's happy and healthy again. And you were also very sick.
Yeah.
Now I have a cold, but I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
But that's why we were a week late. Sorry, everybody.
Look bad, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's kind of worrisome, especially when babies get sick, because they can't tell you that they're feeling bad.
It was horrible. She had a couple ear infections, but this was the first time she's actually been like really sick. She caught RSV, which is
really sick virus.
Really sick virus. Very scary for babies to get. A lot of times they end up hospitalized.
What is that actually?
It's respiratory something virus. I don't know.
It's about to be like rubellum.
No. But praise God, she did not have to go to the hospital.
That's not the virus that makes what kind of cough do they get? Whooping cough.
No, that's pertussis.
Yeah.
That's why I made you get the Tdap vaccine before I let you be near her. That's what the P is in Tdap.
Vaxxed up. I got a fresh dose of autism.
Oh, stop. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Operation Mongoose was a covert CIA and Department of Defense program to overthrow the Communist Castro regime in Cuba. It began on November 30th, 1961, and ran until January of 1963. Now, previously, I had mentioned that Operation Mongoose was all of the assassination plots against Fidel Castro. Those are in here, but there's also a bunch of other plans that include political operations, psychological operations, military and sabotage operations, intelligence operations, and assassination attempts on key political leaders, including Fidel Castro. It was run by the CIA operative Edward Lansdale, who's also known for some other operations in other countries fighting communists.
Say the name again?
Edward Lansdale.
Okay, got it.
I'm going to get into another thing that he did, but he was in the Philippines and convinced the rebels that they were vampires.
Oh, that's good.
So
cool. I'm talking about vampires next time.
Yeah. So this will be a good precursor.
Good segue.
This is Country Roads Creeps. We're in sync today.
That was good.
Tell me why. I was going to ask you if you have any news, but we kind of already did that.
Yeah, that's all.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Country Roads Creeps and give us 5-star reviews.
Please. And thank you.
Pretty please.
Oh.
And if you don't, you're going to be on the naughty list.
I'm going to shout out the principal at my school. I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to dox us, but she told me that she has listened to every episode we've put out since the beginning.
No.
And that's my first thought was, oh no. But she said she loves it.
Oh no. Hello, principal.
Yeah, so she's a big fan, probably one of our biggest supporters, which is really cool.
Great.
Yeah, she said she looks forward to it every week. Or every other week when we put it out, and she loves it. So thank you. You know who you are, and we appreciate you.
I don't know if my boss listens to the podcast.
My boss is better than yours.
Probably not. If my boss does listen to the podcast, consider giving me a raise.
He works so hard. He earned it.
I work so hard.
Anyway,
I'm going to start off by going through the standard sort of disclaimer for this series of episodes I'm doing for the true conspiracies. Mm-hmm. Basically, I want to do more conspiracy-centered episodes in the future, but when we get into the stuff that is half confirmed or not confirmed at all, the pushback is, well, the government would never do that, or something that's why would they ever do that? And in complete truth and reality, yes, they would do that, and they keep doing it over and over and over again, and it's ridiculous. So there's that. Sometimes there are real conspiracies that the United States has admitted to. And everybody pretty much says like, well, that was the 60s. That would never happen today, except for that it does, because the 60s isn't actually that long ago. So, and actually like a lot of the documents that are coming out of the 60s and the 70s, they are not releasing specifically because those people are still alive.
Oh, yeah. Yikes.
So like this, I mean, this stuff still regularly happens. Actually, I'll give you, there's a new recent thing that like just freaking happened. So I'll give you the quick version of it. Is
it the CEO thing?
No.
Okay.
No. But that's another thing. But so way long ago, there was a boat called the USS Liberty, and it was attacked. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
USS Liberty was in I'd have to look into all those super big details. I think it was in the Mediterranean. And I saw this interview recently. One of the guys who was part of the crew there was like, yeah, we had all of our United States markings painted on the side of the boat. We had our American flag flying way big on top of the boat. And Israeli planes flew by and they like waved at us. They were flying low enough we could see them taking pictures of the boat and stuff. And so they knew that we were there. And they knew that it was an American ship, obviously. Like, how could you mistake it? It had American markings. It had American flag. And then later, he said the same type of plane, but they were completely blacked out, I think, is the story. With no markings, they came and attacked them. And then an Israeli submarine that had Star of David flag painted on the side shot torpedoes at them and stuff. The story was that I guess the official story, it was a case of mistaken identity. I don't know how that could possibly be, but the truth is that there was a ton of CIA and national security agents that were on the ship, and we were spying on Israel, and Israel didn't like that, so they attacked the ship and killed a bunch of Americans. Now, fast forward to like last week, there was a plane, I think it was an F-16, that was flying in the Mediterranean, and it was shot down. And the reason that it was shot down, the United States now is saying that it was some kind of an accident, that it was shot down. They shot down like their own plane or something because IFF malfunctioned. That is not how IFF works, is identify friend or foe. Mm-hmm. They like... If an American ship sees an American plane, it's on radar that this is an American. Right. It probably has like the serial number for the plane. Like you can't mistake it. So the conspiracy now is that what they thought for the USS Liberty, what Israel had put out was they thought it was an Egyptian ship, and that's why they shot it. They're now saying they thought it was well, they're not actually saying this, but I guess the conspiracy is that they think that it's an Egyptian plane that's spoofing IFF for the Americans. Oh. And that's what they said for the original USS Liberty, is that they thought it was an Egyptian ship. I don't know how they do that, but it's, Anyway, that kind of stuff happens all the time. And now America is like, yeah, it was an accident. It's like, you don't accidentally shoot down your own ship. Like, sorry, that's just not how that works.
Yeah.
But they're willing to look stupid so that they don't embarrass an ally. Which is exactly what one of the president guys said, or like one of the chiefs of staff said in the USS Liberty thing. He's like, we're not going to embarrass our good friends Israel because they shot our ship.
Yikes.
Anyway, so getting back on topic. So, I also mentioned Operation Northwoods at the end of the last episode. And I was going to separate them into individual episodes, but there's actually not that much to really mention on Operation Northwoods since it was a rejected plan. Mm-hmm. So just to mention it and give the basic rundown, Operation Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation that originated within the Department of Defense in the United States in 1962. and it called for CIA operatives to stage terrorist-like attacks on American military and civilian targets. And they were actually meant to carry out some of these false flag terror attacks. Then they can blame this stuff on Communist Cuba, go to war with them. Now, I should mention that a lot of these plans, and this extends to Operation Mongoose, all the plans had kind of a deadline. They didn't exactly know what the deadline was. Because at this point, Cuba and Russia didn't have an official defense pact. So if they could go to war with Cuba first, before there was this defense pact in place, then they wouldn't also have to go to war with the Soviet Union, which they really didn't want to do because they're pointing nuclear missiles at each other. And that's bad.
Yeah, not ideal.
So it's also completely unclear to me that, like, at the time, they were sort of friendly, even if they didn't have an official defense pact. If we went to war with Cuba, the Soviets could just be like, hey, we're going to defend our friends just because we want to. And guess what? Now you're at war with us.
Yeah.
So it's like, just because it's not written on paper doesn't mean that we just wouldn't have to deal with it. But anyway, some of the Operation Northwoods attacks included secretly painting a civilian airliner as a United States Air Force plane and then shooting it down over the coast of Cuba and blaming it on Cuba. Although that's like the dumbest plan I've ever heard of, because if you have an enemy country that or pseudo enemy country, and you fly a military plane over their coast and they shoot you down, that's your fault.
Yeah, they're kind of within their right to do that.
They're totally within their rights to shoot down an enemy aircraft over their airspace.
Yeah.
That's not...
So
which is exactly the thing that assumedly, I'm not saying that this happened because this hasn't been confirmed yet, but if Israel thinks that there's an Egyptian plane that's spoofing United States IFF over what airspace they're controlling in the Mediterranean, they're sort of within their rights to shoot it down. Even if they're wrong, but if it was an Egyptian plane, they don't like Egypt and Egypt doesn't like them.
they should,
So
they want to confirm that first.
they should.
They did that.
Also, they should just chill out over there.
Yeah.
They've been fighting for 6,000 years over the same piece of dirt.
Gosh,
This has never ended.
I
So
don't know what to say to that.
it's just the truth. They've been killing each other over that same piece of land for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it keeps switching hands all the time. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that's the Country Roads Creeps modern geographics section.
Everybody chill out.
Everybody
That's
chill.
our official statement.
Please
Everyone
stop.
chill out.
But they even had a plan to shoot down a civilian airliner as a decoy and land the real one in a secure location. And so they gave everybody aliases on this airliner, and then they were going to land them and then take off again and then shoot down a fake one over Cuba, and so that they could say that Cuba shot down a civilian plane. Or what? And so they were going to assassinate Cuban migrants in America. They were going to sink boats of Cuban refugees trying to make it to Miami. Because they sink all the time. And so, but they could be oh, they're blowing up now, and Cuba's the one blowing them up, even though it's the United States. They were going to blow up a U.S. ship, and they were just going to commit general terror attacks in major U.S. cities, specifically major cities in Florida and Washington, D.C. So why? You want to take any guesses why they wanted to do this?
For power.
Close. Castro took power in 1959 and started putting communists in positions of power, kind of making kissy face with other communist countries like Russia. So the United States didn't like that because they're in a Cold War with Russia and they don't like communism. So, and this whole, for 30 years, all the United States did is go to war with communist countries and make sure that communism didn't spread. And they lost every single one of those wars. So they that's the reason there's a North and South Korea, is because they lost. And that's also the reason that they had to pull out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because they lost. So, and there's reasons that they lost, and everybody can argue about it. I don't care. Anyway.
Official statement.
Did you also know that, so like South Korea a few weeks ago, their president declared martial law? Did you see that?
I saw that headline and I was doing something and did not end up going back to read what actually that was about.
Check this out. South Korea declared martial law. I'm sure people have heard about this. I don't know what the political parties are like there, but I don't know who is left or right leaning or whatever. I also don't really care that much. But their current party that's in power, the way I read it was like similar to our Republicans and Democrats. They have like a left and right kind of dual party system over there. Whatever the party that's in control now just lost the big election, and the president was like, they're communing with the North Korean communists, and they're going to make us also a dictatorship. And so now I'm going to declare martial law so they stop that. And that wasn't happening. And so a bunch of parliament members in South Korea snuck into the parliament building and like climbed the fences and stuff.
To do what?
So that they could vote to overturn the martial law. And I forget the way it works there, if they need like a supermajority or just a basic majority, but they got enough people in the building to vote a majority and overturn the martial law.
Okay.
So they did.
Hold on. So they had to sneak into their government building to do this vote.
Mm-hmm.
But the vote is still legitimate?
So yeah, I don't understand, because if it's martial law, then the military takes over the like quote unquote peacekeeping at that point. And there's like curfews in place typically, and there's a lot that goes into it. I'm not going to try to explain it on the podcast.
Fair.
When I'm trying to get into other stuff also. But
that's not the main topic.
This is kind of a weird tangent that I'm getting to, so that I could talk about a different thing in South Korean history. But so the military was coming in, and they had, actually it's funny, so they had FN SCAR 5.56 rifles. There's like 4 people that listen to the show that know what that is. But they had blue bolt carrier groups, which means that they were simunitions, which is like a chalk round that people use for training, the military and police use for training. And so it's non-lethal, but it hurts like a daggone heckin' thing when you get shot with one.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It sucks. And so they had those, and they had really cool uniforms. Anyway, they got enough people to go in, and actually one of the parliament members live streamed himself on TikTok sneaking into the parliament building.
It's just interesting that they're having to do this, like, what's the word? Clandestine?
Yeah.
Is that how you say that?
Yeah. So.
Okay, but the vote's still recognized.
Yeah, so I guess the thing was that people were like, well, if there's martial law, then does the president even have to go with the vote? And I guess the thing is that, like, technically he doesn't. But it only goes as far as the military is willing to shoot civilians over.
Yeah.
So, like, and that's the same for any country. Like, if you want to have a dictatorship, you really need to make sure that the military is on your side, because that's the force that's keeping the public from hanging you by a lamppost in front of the Capitol building.
Yeah.
As graphic as that sounds. Now, speaking of hanging politicians from a lamppost, South Korea has done that over and over again. Every single president in South Korea, except for one.
For real?
Has either been overthrown by a coup and assassinated, or put to death, or overthrown by a coup and thrown in prison.
I did not know.
Since like the 50s, ever since South Korea has been a country, they have either killed or thrown in prison one of their presidents.
Really?
Except for the guy, actually, so there was a lady in like 2016, just to prove that a woman could do the job just as good as a man can, she was overthrown by a coup and thrown in jail. So,
Shane, do you happen to know off the top of your head how long their current president has been in that position?
3 years, I think.
Do they have a term limit?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I think because the United States,
he might want to figure out an exit plan.
Well, so he just lost his election.
Uh-huh.
So it's like 3 or 4 years, I think, is how long. But there was one guy who did a term and left still popular.
Good for
There's
him.
only been like one out of like 30 presidents that they've had. I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of a weird tangent to like just say that like South Korea has assassinated all of their presidents or thrown them in jail. It's kind of neat. So
that's one word for it, I guess.
Let's take a cue from South Korea. No, just kidding.
Shut up.
So let's throw all our politicians in jail. Anyway, just to be clear, these Operation Northwoods plans were thought up. Number one, they were thought of. The U.S. committing false flag terror attacks against its own military and its own citizens. And then it was authorized by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So like the people that are closest to the president. And it took John F. Kennedy, one guy, it took the president to say, no, I don't think we should do this. So there's only one guy standing in the way of like the United States government killing its own citizens. Can you believe that? Is that not the craziest thing ever?
Well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's why I'm doing these episodes, because they've done it since then. So, and like a lot of times.
Like you want to say.
Like a bunch of times.
You want to say, no, that would never happen. But all the stories you've told me has proved otherwise.
So they thought of this plan. The Joint Chiefs of Staff authorized it. JFK said, no, I'm going to reject this. And I've heard the argument that like, it was only a plan that someone came up with and it was rejected, so it's not really a big deal. No, like, it's bad enough that the CIA and the Department of Defense came up with it and wrote it down.
And presented it. Like.
And then the Joint Chiefs of Staff authorized it. They said, yeah, this is great.
Yeah. There's too many people that were on board with this.
You have one signature left that is a yes or no.
Yeah, it got way too close.
Like, there's only one guy standing in between the United States killing its own citizens just to go to war with Cuba. And then by proxy, the Soviet Union, because they would have stepped in my opinion, they would have. But those documents would be declassified and released after 1997 by the JFK Assassination Review Board. But now we can get into Operation Mongoose. It's also known as the Cuban Project. I'll just be referring to it as Operation Mongoose because that's what everybody pretty much knows it as. Authorized by JFK on November 30th, 1961. Now, this project was run out of JM Wave, which is the code name given to a secret U.S. covert operations station that was operating from 1961 to 1963 on a formal naval air station. It's about 12 miles south of the main campus of the University of Miami and is actually currently a building in the university's southern campus. But it was referred to as the CIA's Miami station or the Wave station. So the government formally authorized the operation on March 17th, 1960, when President Dwight Eisenhower signed off on a CIA paper titled A Program of Covert Action Against the Castro Regime. And that paper was signed by President Eisenhower, and it would be the only report issued by the government throughout the entire operation. And that's pretty much a testament to how covert this project was supposed to be. Presidential order gave the agency authorization to create an organized unit of Cubans that had been exiled from Cuban mainland. And they were going to do these opposition programs. So they had all these like propaganda operations and things like that were supposed to draw support for the movements and everything. They created an intelligence gathering network inside Cuba, and they were going to develop a paramilitary force that would be introduced into Cuba to organize and lead resistance groups in like all over the country. They used radio broadcasts and leaflets that were going to be passed around, and it was just supposed to propagate support for what they were trying to set up as a provisional government. They were given a budget of $4.4 million. Go ahead, ask me what that is.
What is that in today's money?
$45 million.
Oh my God.
907,564.63.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's so much money.
There's another one in here.
Oh gosh.
Like I said, they used radio and print mediums to spread all this anti-Castro propaganda all over Cuba and some other Latin American countries. And then during JFK's term, the Bay of Pigs invasion was planned and staged. Gigantic failure. Have you ever heard of Bay of Pigs?
Yes, but I don't know enough about it to tell you what it was.
They planned this invasion of Cuba. They tried to get a bunch of Cuban rebels to invade Cuba so that they could kind of keep the United States out of it, quote unquote. So they didn't really do that very good because there were some Navy ships that were sunk because Cuba found out about this operation beforehand somehow. This whole operation is me telling you that Cuba found out about something before the United States did it. So they're just one step ahead the entire way. But they found out about this operation, the Bay of Pigs. They were able to defend against it. They sunk some Navy ships. There were some Air Force planes that were shot down that killed a few of the people. The CIA denied that for decades. That actually wouldn't come out until the late 90s or early 2000s, one of these document dumps that they did that were within the JFK files. Oops.
Why did all of this stuff get released? Are you talking about that later?
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
Yeah. So the short answer is because they had to, pretty much. They also still don't have to, but I'll get into it. Anyway, I completely lost my spot. I totally scrolled way bad.
That's okay. Take your time.
CIA denied these planes were shot down for decades. It killed a few of Air Force members. And then the Joint Chiefs suggested to the military and the CIA begin Operation Mongoose. And it was officially authorized by JFK. And they decided on the name in I think it was November. I've got it in here somewhere. But anyway, the CIA and these high-up military guys made this report of plans that they could implement that would be a reasonable action for why they could then invade Cuba and go to war with Cuba, and reasons that would be acceptable to the American people. I read on, I think it's the wiki, that they came up with 32 plans, or what they called tasks. But the only reason I'm putting this in here is because it doesn't make any sense to me. They came up with 32 plans, and they called it Operation Mongoose, just as there were 33 accepted species of mongoose. You'd think they could just come up with an extra one and make it 33, right?
Yeah.
But if there's 32, why didn't they just call it Operation Baskin Robbins? Because there's 32 flavors of ice cream.
Yeah, you're close, but you're not really close enough.
You could say close, but no cigar, which is what I'm about to get into.
Okay.
There's a bunch of information on how the structure was set up and who is doing what, which agencies are involved. It's kind of lengthy. I'm not going to get into it in here because mostly I just want to get into the completely Wile E. Coyote Looney Tunes plots that they had against Castro because it's crazy. So,
okay.
Fast forwarding a little bit, in 1967, the Inspector General issued a report on the various plots conceived to assassinate Castro, and it separates the plots out into several different time frames, starting with prior to August 1960 and ending with late 1962, well into 1963. So now, these assassination plots are confirmed, so to speak, as in that, they did come up with them. They tried to implement a few of them, but they call it, according to the Inspector General's report, it's an imperfect history due to the sensitivity and the covertness of the operations that were being conducted.
Okay.
And he's basically going off of oral reports from agents who were involved. So just so we're clear, from that report, he says that there were no official records that were actually kept based on who was doing what and what exactly they're trying to plan. So throughout or rather up until 1960, August 1960, they had plans to sabotage Castro's speeches, like spraying LSD all over his broadcast room.
Oh.
And that idea was scrapped because the compound is unpredictable in its reliability. So if it sits there for a while and might not have the desired effect, and they wanted to make him start hallucinating, and then it would be like he's crazy and nobody could trust him. So they also wanted to lace a box of his cigars with a chemical known to cause temporary disorientation. I think it was also like a LSD derivative or something. Regardless, they wanted to put a hallucinogen in his cigars. They had a plan to line his shoes with thallium salts that would cause his beard to fall out while he was on a trip outside Cuba. He was expected to leave his shoes outside his hotel room to be polished, at which points they would put the salts in his shoes. And that plan was abandoned because he canceled his trip. So they were like, we're this close.
How would that have worked? I don't know anything about thallium salts. How long does it take for you to make your hair fall?
I don't know. But if they could make it fall out, and then, because he was called the Beard. So if they could get his hair to fall out, then everybody would be like, oh, you're not really, like, whatever.
I mean, he could have just said he shaved it.
You don't look cool anymore, so we're not going to follow you.
That's so stupid.
Like,
okay.
So they enlisted the help of mafia members with gambling contacts because apparently when Castro nationalized like the entire economy in Communist Cuba, it also pretty much kicked the mob out of all the gambling joints. And so they wanted revenge. So they offered a mobster called Johnny Roselli $150,000 for the successful assassination of Castro. Now, there's another guy called Edward Gunn, which I'm pretty sure is an alias for another mobster, who received a box of cigars that he was tasked with poisoning, but he destroyed the cigars in 1963. I don't think he ever went through with it. They wanted to administer a poison somehow, and there were a bunch of plans that were considered to administer this poison, quote unquote, somehow. They wanted to administer something highly toxic with a pin. They had bacterial material in liquid form. They wanted to treat a cigarette or a cigar with some kind of bacteria. And they had a handkerchief treated with a bacteria. I think that when they say bacteria, they mean I'm going to get into it in a little bit, because they did something with his wetsuit. But it's the bacteria that's known to cause tuberculosis, I think.
Oh, that's scary.
Which is like a long death. Like they really wanted the guy to like suffer.
Yeah, I guess it would have been more public.
The final product that they decided on was solid botulin pills that would dissolve in a liquid. There was something I saw about this on some video that I watched, and I couldn't find it really in anywhere else. There's actually a lot of this information I'm pulling these plans from is you can actually go on, it's like a .gov website for a FOIA request, and you can find where they've put out the report that says what they were planning. By the way, I'll get into it later, but Castro was alive as of like 8 years ago.
8 years?
Yeah,
How did I not know that?
He died recently, like...
The more you know.
I think either during Obama's last term or Trump's first term or something. Is when he passed away. So could you imagine being like a world leader and then finding out that the United States had
trying to
all
kill
of these plots to assassinate you?
That's crazy.
I mean, I'm sure he knew at the time. Evidently, he knew of some of them, but like all of the plans, they just put it out and you're still alive. like,
okay.
Like, hey, wait a minute.
What the heck?
So anyway, this Roselli guy, the mobster, had an associate that he called Sam Gold. The real name was Sam Giancana. They used their connection with some other Cuban guys to coerce Cuban official Juan Orta to perform the assassination through his gambling bills. And Orta after being provided several pills of quote-unquote highly lethal content, reportedly attempted the assassination multiple times, but eventually pulled out after getting cold feet.
Wow.
So, I don't know. But speaking on the pills, I meant to say this. I saw something in a video, and there were a few people who they tried to get to put like poison pills in something, and there was like some lady that they contracted to put like cyanide pills in like a vial of lotion or something, and it dissolved in the lotion.
Oh, so then you would absorb it through your skin?
Well, I don't think in the quantity that you would need to actually, because you would just use like a little bit at a time.
True.
So she was like, shoot. And now they're gone. And she was going to try to, like, she put him in that so that she could have it with her. And then she was going to make Castro a drink and put the cyanide in there. But then she opened it up and then the story was that she went back into the room with Castro and he was like, you were going to kill me, weren't you?
Oh, what?
And then I think they killed her. I don't know. I didn't hear the end of the story, but anyway.
Yikes.
That's a little bit of misinformation from me because I don't actually know that to be completely true.
We're starting a rumor.
Anyway, this Roselli guy didn't get the result that he wanted out of the guy that owed gambling debts. So he found another guy, Dr. Anthony Verona, and the plot to assassinate Castro by poison pill was completely scrapped after the Bay of Pigs. The reason they said was because after the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Inspector General said that Castro wasn't visiting the restaurant that they were going to try to poison him at. So they just couldn't do it anymore. The second phase of this mafia gambling syndicate operation began in May of 1961. And it's a project called Zrrifle, Zrrifle. I don't know if that's a misspelling or not. I just wrote it the way that I saw it. Now, they had this dude who had he was responsible for 8 assassination attempts against Castro. None of them worked. The portion of the scheme contained, quote, an executive action capability, assassination of a foreign leader, a general standby capability to carry out assassinations when required. Now, what they wanted to do with this project Zrrifle was to spot potential agents and research assassination techniques that could be used. And basically all of this got funneled into Operation Mongoose in November 1961 when this primary agent got contracted as the head of the task force for Cuba. So there was an agreement between JFK and Khrushchev, the Russian guy, that you remember when he was like, Khrushchev, don't shoot missiles at us in the Cuban Missile Crisis. You remember that? Neither of us were alive there.
Sure don't.
But he said that. He said, please don't kill us with missiles. And Khrushchev said, well, I won't if you won't.
Deal.
And they shook hands. And then since then, Russia and the United States have been best friends. So anyway, they had an agreement to solve the Russian United States Cuban Missile Crisis. There was already a plan in place to blow up a Cuban industrial facility on that date on October 28th. It was beyond recall by the time Kennedy learned about it, and that explosion would kill 400 Cuban workers. And they say the Soviets probably saw it as a reminder of the United States' ability to do covert action against the Cubans. But that could have gone so much worse. Like, could you imagine us like signing a deal that like, hey, we're not going to do nuclear war against each other, right? And they're like, great deal. And then on the plane back to Russia, they get the news that the United States just blew up a huge industrial facility. And they're like, hey, what the heck?
Yeah.
We just said we weren't going to bomb each other.
Agreed for peace. So you said Kennedy didn't know. Like, kind of crazy that this is happening Without the president's knowledge.
Yeah.
Approval.
Well, so a lot of this, like I was saying, is completely covert. So when the president says, I'm signing off on this project, and this has happened a lot throughout history, the United States president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff say, hey, here is free reign to do whatever you have to do. And the CIA is like, great, 2 thumbs up. And then they don't tell anybody anything.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And they do crazy stuff. Like
in secret.
Like in the Middle East in 2005. Anyway. So it's the craziest stuff ever. The CIA stuff is the craziest stuff.
Back to the script.
So anyway. In early 1963, the CIA devised a plot to provide Castro with a diving suit contaminated with a fungus and contaminating the breathing apparatus with tubercle bacilli, which is the bacteria that causes tuberculosis. That plan was never implemented, but it's speculated that the diving suit had been purchased with the intention of giving it to Castro. There were various other methods of assassination that had been thought of by the CIA that included exploding seashells, having a former lover slip him poison pills, which is the thing I was talking about earlier with the story about the lotion stuff, and exposing him to other poison items like a fountain pen and even ice cream. He was, excuse me, he was known to love ice cream. He loved ice cream.
They're going to poison the ice cream.
Hashtag Joe Biden also loves ice cream. So, anyway, I saw something that somebody said he ate like 4 pints a day or something.
That's a lot.
Yeah, which is like, he wasn't like a big guy. He was like...
Fast metabolism.
Yeah, it's like, you really got to be like, if you're eating like, I don't know how many calories is in a pint of ice cream, in 1960s ice cream, but like, you really got to be... on top of it. Like, you're eating like 2,000 calories a day in just ice cream.
Yeah, you got to be working out.
And then the rest of the time, like, you're just running and eating steak and eggs, I guess. I don't know. But, like, the United States Senate's Church Committee of 1975 stated that it had confirmed at least 8 separate CIA-run plots to assassinate Castro. Now, there's a guy called Fabian Escalante who was... like, for a super long time, tasked with protecting Castro's life. He says, do you want to guess how many assassination attempts he says that there were? More than 8.
I have no idea. Give me a range.
638.
Okay, I was not going to guess that high. I was going to say like 63. 608?
638.
638.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot.
There were a bunch of assassination ideas that were floated by the CIA during Operation Mongoose. The most infamous was their plot to capitalize on Castro's well-known love of cigars by slipping in his cigar supply a very real-looking exploding cigar.
That is a Looney Tunes.
Which is the most... I even posted that clip, or not the clip, but a picture of that clip from the Looney Tunes where Bugs Bunny lights a cigar and then he smokes it and it blows up.
Yeah.
Like, anybody can find that. The Looney Tunes did the exploding cigar gag all the time, but it's like, I don't even...
Was that before or after this idea? Did he get this from Looney Tunes? I don't know how
the Looney Tunes is pretty old. I don't
know the timeline on that.
Probably like a long running gag. Actually, so I think...
He was like sitting at home watching Looney Tunes.
I think they did get it from Looney Tunes, and I'll tell you why, because they actually said in some of these... reports, I think I'll get into it later, but they said that the exploding cigar gag, some people said it was a real thing, and some people said that's just what we told the press when they asked too many questions.
Oh.
Because the press was assumedly asking questions about us doing operations in Cuba and assassinating Castro, and they were just like, yeah, I think we're going to slip him an exploding cigar like Bugs Bunny. So it's like the joke thing that they would tell people, but then other people said, no, we were actually going to put...
actually thought about it.
Like, anyway, that, like, basically they were just giving it to tabloids. But there was another attempt at Castro's life with the fountain pen, like I mentioned. It was going to be loaded with a poison called blackleaf 40, which is a nicotine-based insecticide. And it was passed to a Cuban asset in Paris the day of President Kennedy's assassination. I also read on one that they painted a tunnel on the side of a mountain, but he just went right through it. And then they try to catch up with him, and they hit the,
wall.
So that one's a joke, for the record. I know it sounds super real, but
it's hard to tell with some of these.
After Operation Mongoose was ended, the administration attempted to mend relations with Cuba, but the Cubans were naturally skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And
you don't say.
Kind of runs parallel with the plan that was conceived to persuade Castro over to the United States side and kind of be an ally of sorts.
Yeah.
The Cuban project, as with the earlier Bay of Pigs invasion, is widely acknowledged as a gigantic American policy failure against Cuba. According to Noam Chomsky, it had a budget of $50 million per year, employing 2,500 people, including about 500 Americans, and remained secret for 14 years from 1961 to 1975. It was revealed in part by the Church Commission in the United States Senate and part by good investigative journalism. He said it's possible the operation is still ongoing in 1989, but it certainly lasted through all of the 70s. That $50 million per year budget, do you want to guess how much that was?
In today's money?
Yeah.
Tell me.
I think this math is per the amount of years that they did it through, the 14 years. That $50 million per year would be $514,674,496.64.
That's so crazy.
Yep. So that's pretty much it regarding these operations. I should also mention the guy who was supposed to be heading up these operations, that Edward Lansdale guy. I said I would get into him later. He gets an honorable mention for a few other psychological operations in the Philippines. There was a rebellion or something, like the Halabak Rebellion or whatever their name was. He convinced the rebels that there were oswings in the forest. Those are blood-sucking demons that the Filipinos believe in. And they actually kidnapped a member of the rebellion forces, drained him of blood, and then left him in the woods. And then convinced the rebels to completely leave and give up.
That's insane.
Also, in Vietnam, he was responsible for getting a lot of people from North Vietnam to move south because he said that's where the Christians and Christ was. And Christ wasn't helping any of the North Vietnamese or something like that. And then he convinced everybody that the forest was haunted.
That's one way to do it.
I couldn't find a lot of information on that last one about the Christian stuff, but it's that's like the official thing. I've heard time and time again that he convinced the North Vietnamese that the forest was haunted and there's ghosts and stuff. So, and that's why you need to be Christian and democratic and capitalist and not communist.
Because of the ghosts.
Yeah, because ghosts.
Okay.
So, anyway, that's it. So, but yeah, honorable mention for the Oswangs because you're going to be doing vampires next week. So maybe they'll get an honorable mention as like Filipino vampire story.
Yeah, maybe. If I remember.
Yeah, so write that down.
Make a note.
But yeah, Edward Lansdale, there's a lot of guys that are like famous throughout CIA history for doing completely insane operations. Like whatever. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. You have any thoughts or comments?
Definitely nuts. And I hate that, obviously, I hate that the government can do things like that, like planning to kill its own citizens. That's very scary. And you're right. Like, we want to say, oh, they would never, but they would. They did.
Yeah, they have, and they keep doing it.
Oh, did you?
All the time.
Expand more on why we know this now?
Oh, yeah. So, you've heard of a FOIA request.
Yeah.
Freedom of Information Act. So I would have to look into the rules now, but something like after 25 years or something, certain stuff has to be declassified. And there's other rules about what can and can't be declassified, and like if there's still people operating, because obviously people's careers expand over 25 years. But So they can redact certain things. So there's been things that were redacted, but there's been freedom of information requests that have happened that it basically forces the government to show its hand on what they've done. So they pretty much had to do it. Now, I will say, a lot of this, whoops, hit the mic. A lot of this stuff comes from the JFK assassination files and like the United States Senate Church Committees. So they have they've done their own investigations, and the Senate puts this stuff out on their own. It doesn't have to be FOIA request, but a lot of this stuff was released in 1997 as part of the JFK assassination files, the first run of this, and they've done 2 or 3 different releasings of JFK files. And the most recent one that they did was the government basically admitted that the CIA was involved.
With JFK?
Yeah. Like they basically admitted that it wasn't a story. Wasn't a story at all. You know, actually,
what in the world?
So this is going to make you slightly mad probably. You know who like the only person who actually reported on this was?
Don't tell me. Are you going to say Joe Rogan?
No.
Okay.
Tucker Carlson. And then right after that, he got fired from Fox. So that kind of makes me think that he's completely right about it. Like he reported this stuff on Fox. He's like, there's clips of him being like, the CIA just admitted that they're responsible for killing Kennedy. And then Fox fired him.
Okay, so like, have you looked into that? Like, what's the motivation? Why would they do that?
So...
Is this a different episode?
We really need to make this its own episode.
Okay, we can. That.
My short version of this is that Kennedy was responsible for stopping a lot of the operations that the CIA and the Department of Defense wanted to do.
Yeah.
This goes back to the Operation Northwoods stuff where they wanted to do false flags and he said no. And then then they killed him. And then they got Lyndon B. Johnson in or whatever, or Nixon or whoever the heck. And so here is a Joe Rogan joke because he used to say that like when the president gets elected, they take them into a cigar smoke filled room and they show him a different angle of the JFK assassination.
Oh my God.
And then they say, now you're going to do what we want you to do.
Yeah.
And they do it every time. Every president for like the last 50 years had said, I'm going to do this great thing. And then they don't do that.
Yeah.
So.
Facts. That's insane.
But yeah, I would have to like actually look into what the reporting was this most recent time.
Yeah.
But then also they said we're not going to release a lot of this information because like we have a lot of these other documents that we can't release because the people are still alive. And it's like, if you didn't do anything wrong, then who cares? But they're like,
you see,
that's kind of our point.
Yeah. So I was also going to ask, like, how do we know that what they've released is real? But then I was like, well, it's really like incriminating and it really looks bad. So they wouldn't have put that out if it was not real. Like they would have made themselves look better if they were going to doctor it up a little bit, you know? Yeah.
Well, so that's sort of another theory is like, what if they did make themselves look better?
Oh, and it still looks really bad. Oh no.
So, but yeah, the JFK assassination is like, and I've heard a bunch of other stories. Like I should say this now that like, I don't know what to think about the JFK assassination. I've seen a lot of people reporting on, and I haven't poured through all the documents myself. I've seen people reporting on them, like the clips of Tucker Carlson. Mm-hmm. Whatever you think about him, like he's inflammatory and like says wrong stuff all the time. But he did report on the JFK files and say that the CIA basically admitted that they killed the president, and then he got fired from Fox News.
Yeah.
Known propaganda outlet, just like CNN and MSNBC and all the other ones. So, like, I mean, maybe you shouldn't discount it just because it came out of Tucker Carlson's mouth. Maybe we can say that. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah. I mean,
but
stopped clock is right twice a day.
Yeah. So, like, you know, speaking of stop clocks that are right twice a day, freaking Alex Jones said it 30 years ago.
I cannot stand Alex Jones.
That guy sucks.
He sucks so bad.
But if I make any jokes, I'll get a DM about it. So.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we better.
Did you see the video of him hitting a drone with a bat?
No,
He was ranting about
everything I can about that man.
Ranting about the drones in New Jersey. And he was like, they're evil. And he hit it with a bat or something.
Sheesh.
That's the most insane guy ever. Like, why anybody... I have a hard time believing that he has a real, like, serious audience that seriously listens and pays attention. But then you obviously know that there is because people
are nuts.
Yeah. So, me too. Anyway. But yeah, so the JFK assassination is probably going to be its own episode. The one thing, so I should also want to mention is that during Trump's first term, he was in the way of other JFK files coming out. And then in a recent interview, like right before he got reelected this most recent time, he said, I think it was actually on his the interview that he did with Joe Rogan. He was like, if you saw what I saw in the JFK files, you wouldn't want it released either. Which, like, what? What?
Hold on. Back that up. Let's talk about that.
Like, because, like, you know, like, Joe Rogan's going to ask about it. And he's like, what about the JFK files? And he's like, I didn't want to release it. If you saw what I saw in the JFK files, you wouldn't want it released either. It's like, why not? Who did it?
What does that mean?
Like, what the heck? So the presumption now is that, like, we basically have to wait, which I think he did say that, like, this term he's going to release it. And maybe that's just a thing that he said that the last time he was going to release the JFK files and he didn't. But now he's got that freaking guy, that other Kennedy guy.
Robert? Is that his name?
Yeah, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. His dad and his uncle were killed by the CIA, so... You know it's a conspiracy when your dad gets killed by a guy with two first names, the same name. Sirhan.
What?
That's the guy that killed Robert F. Kennedy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So you really need to up your conspiracy game on this. You need to know about all of them.
Well, I'm learning from you.
Yeah.
We talk about conspiracies. I'm going to break up the conspiracy talk with other random creepy stuff. Next time will be vampires.
Conspiracies does pretty creepy.
It is creepy, but...
I don't know how much creepier you can get than...
Also very anxiety-inducing.
The United States trying to sink its own ship and go to war with Cuba.
No, I didn't say it wasn't creepy. I said other creepy stuff.
I have been wanting to break it up because I think that's why I got sick, actually, is because I started researching for the episode, and then I got sick. Can you believe that?
They put mold spores in your house or something. Like, we have to stop him.
He's
getting too close to the truth.
They put chemicals in my water, and... Anyway, that's
okay.
Completely different
Let's wrap
reference.
this up. I gotta go pick up my baby.
Yep. Okay. So, anything else you want to say at all? Or you're doing vampires next, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Oh yeah, it will be Happy New Year after a couple days before we do our next episode, right? So, I don't know what our schedule is anymore. Yeah.
This will come out on the 26th, day after Christmas.
Yeah.
So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yeah, what she said. I don't know what I'm going to do next.
By the CIA, I guess.
I think I want to skip a conspiracy episode the next time and do a ghost or something.
Yeah. So, just take a little break.
Yeah. And then if I don't get sick the next episode, then we'll know.
We'll know. Yeah. They got you.
They got me. They're too close.
All right.
So this is like... People are going to pull this up like years from now and be like, you can see how he like slowly spiraled into complete insanity.
Into madness, yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, be safe driving home. Watch over the out, dear.
Bye.